Right, so without further ado, I'll introduce the talk that we're having tonight. So the talk is a Climate Emergency Centre for Abingdon. Climate emergency centres are popping up all across the UK as a community response to tackling the climate and ecological crisis. Ruth and Phoenix are from the charity Space Generators, who provide guidance to help communities through the process of finding a suitable space and setting up a climate emergency centre. They are kindly talking to us tonight on the uses and values of climate emergency centres, and will briefly outline how to set one up in our community. So welcome to Ruth and Phoenix and to everybody here. Want to kick off?
Hello, welcome, Abingdonites, or whatever you call yourselves. Very good to meet you. I've been up to the to near you in Oxford. Got a few friends there over the years. So yeah, what's to say? Basically, I've been setting up eco community centres for about 30 years. Since the Rio Earth Summit is when our particular group got together. And during lockdown, one of the things I did was write this how to set up a climate emergency centre handbook, basically sharing all the mistakes and learnings and all the things that will help other groups set up quicker and learn and evolve from the various things. And I'm sure you've got a great collection of really good people and projects here already, but all of our communities need spaces to create, to meet, to organise and come together and work together on some community-led solutions to the climate crisis and give ourselves a bit of hope that collectively we can all take action and make things a little bit better for future generations. So yeah, basically we've written it all down in this Climate Emergency Centre handbook, and we formed a network. So there's groups now. A lot of people got more excited after the Guardian article recently. We had about 30 odd groups, got about another seven cities got in touch and want to set new ones up. So we're busy chatting to groups around the country how to make this process easier. So yeah, I'll chip a few more bits in, but basically if I go over to Ruth to do this slide presentation for 15 minutes, basically tells you the basic mechanics of setting up a centre, and then we're all here to support each other on a kind of integrated network. Over to the brains of the operation, the management. Ruth, over.
Yeah, right.
Most things happen behind the scenes.
As Phoenix was saying, there is a handbook. So this all started with Phoenix basically doing a kind of brain dump of everything he knew after 30 years of setting up centres along the way, and of what works, what doesn't, how to do, and we put it all in the handbook. And the handbook is available on the website. You can go and find it. There's 10 steps basically, and you can go and find those 10 steps on the website. It's also, if you're in the CEC Telegram chat, you can also access it from there. And I think Phoenix will probably put a link to the Google Doc of it, won't you? That's what he's good at doing. So it basically takes you through 10 steps of how to. So what are climate emergency centres? The idea is that they're places that can act as a focal point for communities to reconnect and build resilience. So it's about people and planet. We recognise that a lot of the time the environmental side of things is kind of quite disconnected from the social side of things. And when you get those really creative solutions that are really kind of getting to the core of things, it's when you're looking at things that work for people and planet, because we are all life, basically. And the solutions are the same. So when you find the solutions that work for both, then you've found those true solutions. So the idea is that each climate emergency centre is autonomous. They do what they need to do for their local community. So every local community is different. We've done several meetings in several different places, and they come up with different things because they've got different demographics, or they're in a different area or a different location, if it's coast or forest or whatever, by a river, whatever it might be. And that changes what their focus is. So it's community-led and autonomous. It's about building as strong alliance as possible. It's basically a space for people, for groups to use. So you're providing a space for people to bring things that are about meeting community needs in a resilient and adaptive way. and I suppose the big thing is that it's networked. So we've got a network of these. We've got about 37 odd towns and cities now with teams in, and there's 6 with built with spaces now. And they're all linked up, so you can contact and connect with each other. And as we grow, people can then start collaborating on different events or projects, so that we strengthen messages or we strengthen strategies, because it's being done across a network. And we're sharing skills and resources. So the idea is, if one person's having a problem, don't know how to do this, they can ask, and somebody else has already had that problem and fixed it and can give them the solution. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Okay. So yeah, this map is a map of all the councils that have declared a climate emergency. It's a lot of them. There's over 300 of them. But what have they done since? They are not very much, certainly not in my area either. And because they're stuck. They declare a climate emergency. They often have very little in the way of budgets. There's been a lot of budget cuts at the local government level recently. And a lot of the things a lot of the decisions that are being made need to be made at the national government level rather than the local government level. So they're not sure how to go ahead doing things. So yeah, and a lot of the community spaces that we did have been lost due to austerity since the last financial crisis. A lot of spaces, a lot of libraries and community centres down.
And just to say, most of the groups that have got in touch with their councils have actually had a very good reception back from them. They've been quite keen to work with and align to local groups, and places like Staines and Lewis have been offered a building within their first month, quite surprisingly. Over. And
in my area in Farnham, where I am, just down the road from Farnham, one of the local councillors is on the working group for finding a building in our local town, because they're so like, oh yeah, community doing this is great. They need us to be coming in and doing it with them. They can't do it on their own. Okay. So this is some idea of some of the things that you could put in your centre. But again, it's autonomous. It's up to you. You kind of choose those things that work. So it is about trying to engage the wider community. So traditionally, environmental stuff has been, certainly in my area, there's like a small group of people or a section of the population that does the environmental stuff, and a lot of people that don't engage. And it's about trying to bring everybody in by not just looking at the climate crisis, but also at food poverty and fuel poverty, homelessness, and whatever else might be going on in your local area. Those needs that you identify and see. There might be a need for education. We know in Swindon, one of the things they were talking about doing was they had a lot of teachers and lecturers who were saying we could offer free courses to people who can't afford to go to university anymore. So those sorts of ideas we think about, okay, what can people do? So looking at education. So workshop space, talks and seminars, skills sharing, circular economy resources. Engage. Did you want to say something, Phoenix? Or no?
Yeah, these are just different modules that you could put into any building, dependent on the size of your building. And generally they're skill sharing, kind of open university of skill sharing, I suppose. Need to get a workshop coordinator, but then all those fantastic skills you've got in your community, people can start teaching and sharing with each other. There's a whole range of different things you could be putting in here, from time banks to veggie cafes to art galleries, recording spaces, repair cafes, reuse, recycle. We're really trying to build the kind of circular economy, reuse, recycle kind of theme. And these are all some things that you could put in your centres. We're working with the group Trust the People, who are doing community organising training and showing people how to set up community or people's assemblies. And the idea from that is that local people can gather, work out some community-led solutions, and then feed them to the council and also to the centre organising circle of coordinators kind of thing. So a whole range of things you can put in a building. Over to Ruth, over.
You can do this bit, Phoenix. This is your building.
All right, so it's starting to go. We now have groups in 37 different cities. We've got to get some more photos in this slide. The CECS in Ilford is a massive old home base, 40,000 square foot. We've been providing space for cinemas, Skillshare, workshops and exhibition, and we've got a garden section, provides perfect space for permaculture and community gardens. So we're just starting to get them going now. It's been a bit open and close again with COVID. We have worked out, full professionally drawn up risk assessments as to how we can open. We are hoping to open again around June 21st with an eco solutions exhibition and an ethical trade show and a number of others, got health and wellbeing days and various other things. Yeah, we've got a lot of exciting plans in the pipework for that one. Over in Staines, the group got in touch with their council and were offered a Toys R Us, which didn't quite work out for them, and then they took on a William Hill betting shop. So on the right is a picture of some lovely food. They were linked with their local mutual aid, COVID mutual aid group, and were cooking about 60 meals a day to give out into the local community, which is a beautiful thing. And over in Lewis, they initially were linking up with the local art group, Zoo Studios, to maybe use their bus station space to start having meetings, and then the council offered them this shop basically that they share with the COVID mutual aid groups. We've also got a group in Tiverton which has been offered a Londis by the council that they're working on repurposing, and also in Swindon we were contacted by a property agent who knew the owner of Debenhams, and after a bit of a chat with them from our strategic trustee Linda, we worked out getting them a meanwhile lease on a river island. And from ringing them one week where they only had a few people in the environment groups, but he said they had a lot of community groups. The next week I was on a Zoom call with 25 odd people from all over Swindon, and they've now got very advanced plans and working groups and booked up furniture recycling workshops for the next 2 months ahead or something. So go Swindon. And there is amazing energy, just to finish up with this slide, there's amazing energy in every town, but if you can create a centre that can bring everyone out of the woodwork and see all the amazing and great and good projects that people are doing, and we can all support each other, that's one of the aims of the project, really. Yeah. Get everyone cooperating and focus on some solutions. Okay, Ruth, on to the next.
Just to let you know, Godalming, they got their building. One of the organisers of the Godalming CEC is the deputy mayor in Godalming. I'm going to be mayor. I was telling Sally about this earlier. And they got given a building by a local businessman who was concerned about the environment and has buildings and has space, and was like, please use one of these. And Guildford they've just agreed terms of reference on a building on North Street, which is right in the centre of Guildford. It's in a really good spot. It's massive as well, and they're really organised. They're linked in with the University of Surrey and the CUSP, the CUSP sort of team there that do a lot of the environmental and the economic environmental work as well that goes on there. So yeah, so they're really organised too. Okay, so the practicals. So the idea on
we're hoping Manchester building soon.
Sorry. I don't hear that.
So my internet connection unstable. We're hoping that Manchester gets a building as well soon. Yeah. We're trying to help new groups as well.
They've got something.
Because Zoom makes itself small, and then you have to.
Okay, so practicals. So the idea is that the CEC the team sets up as a not-for-profit company or a charity, which are not-for-profit. Generally speaking, people are looking at a CIC, what's called a CIC. Community interest company, or a CIO charity. And we've got some sort of tips and hints about how to go about doing that. And we've got somebody in the Guildford team who's actually he actually helps people set up a CIO. So it's quite useful. And he's going to be coming and talking and presenting on that into one of our meetings in the next few weeks or so. If you get a privately owned building as a not-for-profit or a charity, getting what's called a meanwhile lease. So it's a building, you say, in the meanwhile, while you're not using your building and it's lying there empty, we have it. So you have it for that period while they're not doing anything with it, basically. The owner still has to pay business rates on an empty non-residential building. Even if it's empty and he's not using it, he still has to pay, and it can be hundreds of thousands of pounds. But if he leases it to a not-for-profit or a charity, he can save up to 100%. How much you save is very much up to your local council and looking at what their policies are and things like that, and also the kind of relationship you have with the local council as well. Sorry, I've got something in my throat. And it may be that if it's like Godalming had that really friendly property owner, it may be that they then also want to donate some of the money that they've saved to help get the CEC off the ground and help with running costs. If the owner pays, if you get less than 100% business rates relief, then you obviously negotiate so that the owner pays the rest. So you're basically getting a building without paying rent. Alternatively, the other way is that the council may be willing to offer you a building on a meanwhile or a short-term lease. Okay. So the reason why is it is a win-win-win for everybody involved. That's the thing about Climate Emergency Centre. It helps the building owner. Not only are they saving money, they'll have 24-hour caretaker security, so you can have people on site 24 hours keeping an eye on things. So that's protecting the premises. It reduces vandalism. So it helps look after their property. It means that they're giving back to their local community, which they do want to do on the whole. And it also helps them with building relationships with the council, because the council loves people. They're really into the idea of these climate emergency centres. So if a property owner is helping the community to do something about the community, that it helps them to build those relationships with the council. There are many, many positives for the council. You're getting more and more people involved in community climate action. You're re-engaging the community. People are getting active rather than sort of passively waiting to see what the council does. They're getting active and doing something about things themselves. It's bringing people back into the high streets, like regenerating the high street. And at the moment with COVID, so many places are shutting down, even where I am, which is quite a sort of nice area. We're getting loads of empty buildings now. It revitalizes the place, it stimulates the economy, reduces street crime, lots of things. And most importantly, it's a real benefit for the teams involved. It's a way to generate some income streams to help fund the projects that you're running. So you can get money through events and space hire. So normally there's like a sliding scale. So if you've got like a student group who want to use a space, you'd be okay, come and use the space. But if it's a local business, money-making business, then you'd say, okay, how much do you want to pay for the space? And you'd sort of work things out that way. And a veggie or vegan cafe is a really good way to bring some funds in, and any other merchandise. So if you're selling plants or whatever it might be. It means that you are then in the same space. There's so much to be said for having different groups with different skill sets, different ways of looking at things, and different knowledge and experience all in the same space together, because they start sort of germinating each other. You sort of cross-fertilize all these different ideas, and that's when new ideas and new solutions come. So it's really important to be in the same space and be helping and supporting each other. It then provides a space for the local community so that they can start to reconnect with each other and come back and start to re-identify, this is our community and our space, and we're looking after it. This is what we want to do. And from there, you're building. It's all about solutions. So in the Climate Emergency Centre, it will be about what solutions do we need for our local community. So how do we build that community resilience? How do we adapt to what's coming or what's here? Actually, because it's already here. And how do we build those support networks so that we can start looking after each other? Okay, who can use it? These are just some ideas. Anybody, any local community or environmental group that you've got happening. These are some of the ones. Do you want to come in, Phoenix?
It really is this, as Greta Thunberg says, our house is on fire. And this really is the time for everyone to drop the small view and get on with the cooperations. And, this really is about cooperation and building an alliance of as many groups who can come together and help and support each other. All sorts of different groups here. This slide was originally done for the Guildford groups. You can see a wide range here, from eco cinemas and repair cafes, Youth Strike for Climate, to groups like reaching out to, more established network like Transition Towns and Friends of the Earth. And reach out and get as many groups involved as possible, because that builds the network, builds strength. And what we're trying to get across here is that this isn't just about one building. This is about the intelligent reuse of the vacant property infrastructure in all of our towns and cities. We can all see empty buildings, empty shops, empty schools, empty factories, whatever it is. And imagine if those could be a space where many groups can cooperate. It's kind of a win-win situation. It's a win for the council because they want to do something about the climate emergency, but they don't have funds. It's a win for the developer because they save money in the interim by, on business rates. And it's a win for the local community and the environment when people are allowed to use these spaces to help the environment and community. And also, it's good for the economy as well, because, small eco enterprises can set up and maybe get a low cost space. Everything we do is on a kind of sliding scale. Groups with less money can pay less, and groups with more can pay more. And also people can energy exchange, time bank type thing, with help out with volunteering, painting or gardening or whatever it is. You know, the more we can link in these groups and get them working together, and particularly start to focus on the solutions, we all, I think, have now got the message how bad things are. But we need people to have a bit of hope, really, and that we are making a difference. And I've seen the magic that happens in these community centres over the years. And, you know, what's needed, we're really, one of the themes is to get old and young working together, the knowledge of the elders and the older people, and the energy enthusiasm of the young people, and particularly how to work all these new fangled technological apps that we need help with. I do anyway. So basically, you know, yeah, reaching out, building an alliance of groups. That's what this is about, and having fun doing it. And, you know, all of it, and you're part of a bigger network gradually that helps each other. You know, we share documents so that it's easier for a group to set up a community interest company or a charity, or fire risk assessment, or, you know, it took our group sometimes many weeks of labouring through trying to find insurance for a building, but we can now tell you there's a company, you tell them these 6 things and they'll give you public liability insurance, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's about getting excited, getting into action, finding a space and getting people together, and you know, working together and giving us some hope, and hopefully focusing on some solutions. Ruth, is that the last slide, or
yeah, that's the last one. Yeah, that's it. So do bear in mind it is a longer term project. So Climate Emergency Centre, it will take time to get your legal entity to build those relationships with the council, get your working groups, identify a building and organise the lease and things. So don't kind of expect it all to happen very quickly. Just allow yourself that time to build. It is a community-based project, so it is about those running it reflecting the local community as much as possible. It can look big, the idea of, oh my God, I've never had a building before, what do I do? But it suddenly becomes small when you've got a group of people around you. We've just had, where I am, we were all going, oh God, legal entity. And then somebody came, oh, can I help? I used to be a solicitor. So yeah, so it's quite handy. So something you might not like the idea of, somebody else, oh no, this is fine for me. So there is a handbook, which is forever draft. We're forever updating and trying to make it look better and improving it. And then also people bring things and useful resources that we then attach and add into the handbook, so it's forever evolving as groups evolve. There is a website. It's no longer in development. It's kind of up and running and looking quite snazzy now. There's a social media chat group, a Telegram chat group, and there's also weekly meetings on Thursdays at 7. So that those people who want to come and get some support or advice, or just want to feedback about what they're doing, that's where to come. We're now starting to plan in different teams coming to those weekly meetings to talk about some of the experience that they've had and some of those journeys that they've had, so that we can get those learnings and experiences to each other without everybody having to do the same thing over and over again. And I think that is it. Yeah, that's step 1 of the handbook.
So yeah, I think that's most of it really. Just to say, I've put the links in the chat to the Telegram group and the slides and the handbook if people want to have a look at that. And if you go to the front page of the website, there's a really lovely video by Ness from the Staines group and Ben from the Guildford group. Staines have already got a building, but they just do a 10-minute presentation each, and it's a beautiful bit where Vanessa says, like, she's a youth worker, a community worker there. She's like, oh, I got a bit daunted about signing a lease, but then we did it. It was fine. And to show that, you know, this is possible. Many groups around the country are working on it. And Guildford did a lot of pre-alliance building, has now got the dean of the university and all sorts of the great and the good of interesting and wonderful projects and community things coming together to work on the Guildford building in the High Street. So yeah, that's most of the concept and the idea really. We're passing out that business model. Groups can get hold of empty buildings, save on the business rates, and it's a win-win for everyone. And hopefully we get this concept out and people start intelligently reusing some of these resources that we have. We recycle bottles, cans and plastic. Why aren't we recycling some of the biggest and best resources we have in our towns and cities? So yeah, that's about it. We're here as a longer term network. We can all help and support each other. Come to the Thursday Zoom. But over to you guys for any questions and answers, and maybe going to breakout rooms to chat about a few things. I think Ruth and someone else need to chat on that. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. Over. Any questions?
Okay, well,
get excited. Let's get a building.
Well, thanks, Ruth and Phoenix. That was a very upbeat presentation, very informative. Thank you. Have you seen the chat? What's on the chat?
I've just been trying to pick it. I saw Hester's. I've just responded to Hester's question. I haven't seen any of it yet. Should we go back and try and start from the beginning with questions?
Yes. So
Yeah.
there's a lot.
Okay.
Comments.
Where should we start from? Okay.
So if you're selling things, is there an issue in relation to the local independent shops who may have to pay rent and rates? Won't they resent us? We found that increases footfall to the businesses around, and they're really, really worried about the high streets falling apart after COVID, and even before COVID, they were struggling. So there was actually an article in the Retail or the Property Gazette, which was quite positive about climate emergency centres as a way to re-energise the high street. If you're going to see a piece of theatre or a workshop, then you might stop into the local shop and buy some things. There is something about selling things on the discretionary business rates form. Some councils won't mind if you want to sell a few t-shirts and mugs or whatever it is, or plants, but you do need to look into that a bit deeper.
Okay, have you seen the question about what is a time bank from Michelle? What is a time bank?
It's a way of people sharing skills in exchange for hours and time. So someone who's a gardener would do 2 hours of gardening for you, and someone who edits books would do 2 hours of editing books for you, or someone who was a carpenter could do 2 hours, and you exchange your hours. So you've built up 14 hours helping the community with clothes making. You've offered that out on a skills register, and then you've got 14 hours that you can then buy carpentry or plumbing or sewing. Or does that help? A bit like the old Let's Exchange system. I don't know if anyone heard of that, but yeah, time banking and Let's Exchange, free skill sharing to each other in communities.
Okay. And then from Meredith Williams, I did get input today from a shopkeeper providing refills that they would prefer to avoid too much overlap. Is that an issue?
No, I think that's good neighbourliness. I think you always try and get on with your neighbours and go and look at what else is in the high street. Obviously, you probably will end up doing coffee, a cafe, and sometimes food is one of the main generators of funds. But, going and having a look at what else is there. And if they're selling watering cans, you don't really want to be doing watering cans, maybe. Yeah. And complementing each other.
Okay.
I can just mention about that. The shopkeeper was also very keen about the idea as in general. So it wasn't a major issue. It was just a comment,
And it might be that he wants to also use that space, so he then can use the Climate Emergency Centre space at some of the time to do some of that. If it's because it's a refill, so I'm guessing it's environment is just refillings. Right, it's like a no waste shop, is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's a deli. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So it might then increase his customer base for him. So.
Her actually.
I work for an open access bike workshop, and we don't have any problems with the local bike shops because we can offer services that they find it uneconomic to offer. So it can be if somebody comes into a shop and says, "Oh, can I do this or have this or buy that?" and it's uneconomic for that retailer to provide that service, they can say, "Well, try the try the Climate Emergency Centre. They do something similar, but like on a not-for-profit basis, which can make things actually happen that aren't profitable."
Michelle, have you got a question? You've got a hand up.
Yes, I do. Thanks, Ruth. I was just wondering if you guys have any experience to share with regard to which different organisations have made up community interest companies, because we would, we started to think about, this legal entity that we would need to create and how we would do that.
We've got Stain set up as a community interest company, and they've provided there's a link to a folder of useful documents in the Telegram chat, and in that it's their articles of association for their for setting up a CIC, and I think Bristol are looking at it as well. I can't remember what Lewis set up as, but yeah, so there's other teams around who have set up, and there is some information in there to help.
Yeah, just to say, you know, we are a totally volunteer network, and there's a few of us working very hard to coach groups up and down the country. So we're always up for a bit more help on the kind of whole wider network support. But we're trying to make Google Docs and documents so that it's easier for other groups, so that, yeah, anyone who's setting up a charity or a community interest company can be in a same Telegram chat and help each other through the process, basically, and make it simpler. Because, you know, yeah, it could take you hours and weeks to try and read through all this yourself, but actually somebody who's done it before, who said, yeah, we got stuck at that point for 4 days, but actually you need to do this. It really, really helps each other. I've propped the article from the Retail Gazette in, basically saying we're very happy that climate emergency centres be setting up, could be good for business. We need to get a better article in there that's got our contact on the end. Over.
Richard Snow, you've got a question.
It's not a question, actually. I just wanted to come in on the legal entity stuff. When deciding whether to become a company limited by guarantee, a CIC, or a registered charity, I think the only thing I'd say on the rates thing, because that's a big part of the decision-making process, because business rates are so high, is that in our experience, the Vale of Whitehorse District Council have not supported social enterprises that aren't charities with rates relief, with discretionary rates relief since 2010. So whether they now will, I don't know, but it's just something to bear in mind. We actually became a charity in 2018 when they then we had their mandatory rates relief, but up until 2018 we didn't benefit, even though we're a bona fide social enterprise. So it's just something to think about. And the only other comment I'd say from some experience is kind of Occam's razor thing, really, is simple. You know, simple is best.
I just got a little direct point back there to Richard and others, is it really is about getting to know your council and finding out what their business rates department people think, and also the councillors can have a small amount of influence there. This model works for not-for-profit companies or community interest companies that have ticked the box to say they're not for profit. I believe a community interest company can go 2 ways. It can be a for-profit social enterprise, or it can be a not-for-profit community interest company. And some councils don't understand community interest companies or not-for-profit versions. So you need to ring the council and ask them, you know, what do you give discretionary business rates to? Do you give it to charities? Do you give it to not-for-profit companies? Or do you understand community interest companies that have designate themselves clearly as not-for-profit? Can they apply for discretionary business rates? And you'll get a slightly different answer from different councils, but generally any not-for-profit or a charity should be able to apply up to 100%. But again, some councils may have changed that, like Richard's saying, so do find out more. And this whole game is about, as Linda, our strategic 70-year-old trustee, tells me, it's all about building relationships. Once you've rung that business rates officer in the council, the asset property manager in the council, or the head of a CEO of a big property company, seems really big, but after you've done 4 or 5 or 6 phone calls, you start to get friendly and you build a relationship, and you're asking various other things on top. So yeah, building a relationship with the council and the business rates and council and property developer people. Over. I don't know who was next. I think Ruth's got her hand up, but I'm not sure. I'm not
going to respond a little bit on that as well. There are a couple of people in terms of the council, useful people, as there's normally a climate change officer of some kind that's looking at their climate action, their plan. The council climate action plan is probably a lone person not knowing what to do. And there's also a regeneration officer or something similarly named who's about sort of, you know, renewing and generating and those 2 people are normally really positive about the idea, and they can help you kind of navigate the council corridors. The other thing is, one of the things that's happened near me is that Godalming, when they set up, they've applied to be a CIO, and they've set it up to cover the whole of the borough of Waverley, which includes Farnham, which is where I am, and a couple of other places as well. So that a few of us can then use the same CIO. So they've set it up to cover. So you could look at that sort of thing as well if you've got other people nearby, or you're thinking that other people might want to set up. That's me.
Okay, on the chat, Daniel, Daniel's asked, have there been any problems with planning permissions?
No, not that we've encountered so far. Basically, it's a meanwhile lease that lets you use it temporarily up until they, do find a new tenant or demolish or whatever it is. And we haven't had to do anything on changing planning permission use, like from a home base to people coming in and using the space to a climate emergency centre. And we've had 5 local councillors in and even the local MP who really like what we're doing. So we haven't encountered any problems there yet. We do live in a slight grey area where we have, you can either lock the building up at night and get someone to come back and open it again in the morning. That's one option. Or we sometimes build into a model where you can have maybe between 2 to 6, 4 or 5, live-in caretaker stroke security. And we live in a bit of a grey area there. I would like to clarify that better, but basically the developers know that we've got 2 to 4 people staying there as caretaker stroke security. In fact, that saves them £1,000 a week on security as one of the selling points, basically.
Sue's got
Hi, can I just ask, how long is the meanwhile lease normally? It's a bit worrying, spending lots of effort setting something up and then it not lasting long.
Yeah, generally 1 to 5 years. It can depend. A lot of the time you're looking at, signing a meanwhile lease for a year and then it's got 28-day cancellation time. Sometimes there's a building we're in negotiation in the Docklands. The guy's like, well, we'll have it for 10 years and we can lease it to you for 10 years and you can use it for lots of stuff. But generally, meanwhile leases are just for a year or 2, and they might get extended by 6 months and then another 6 months and then another 6 months, that kind of thing. In the long term, we'd really like to see these buildings build up an infrastructure of a number of buildings and save money to buy some buildings in the long term to help the environment rather than moving every year or 2. But that's a longer term vision. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Daniel?
There's a question of location and geography. It seems to me, looking at our particular town, it would be hugely beneficial to have one right in the middle, because the town is sort of divided between north and south. And I can just see if you take a cheaper or available premises, either north or south, it might prejudice the one that the area doesn't get it, and it would change the character of the use as well. So I just wondered how important a really central location is.
Ruth, I did a couple of responses to what you were asking, Daniel, in the chat. Location seems to be quite a core part of the decision making about buildings and where to be, and it depends very much on what you want to do. So for Abingdon, it sounds like you want to be able to get as many people involved as possible, and outreach does tend to be, I'd say, it's the most popular thing that people come up with. We want to be right central so we can get as many people able to come in and connect with us as possible. But some places they want to be further out because they want more land. So there was people in Cardiff that were looking at one point. They were talking about wanting somewhere which had a lot of outside space because they were in quite a poor area and a lot of people use food banks, and food bank food is like not fresh food. It's tinned food. They wanted to grow food, so they wanted a lot of outside space. So they were looking at somewhere further out. So it depends on what your priority is for your local area.
So can I ask, I assume that you really have to be on the ground floor, because if you go upstairs, you've got disabled access issues if you move from residential to anything else.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Leads on to a couple of bits we try and share with groups early on, is that you don't have to use all of the building straight away. Just because you've got a 3-story office block, you can just start in the reception and have one side as a cafe and the other side as an art gallery or cinema. And as you and open for 1 day a week, then as and when you get them for like a cafe or a cinema night or something easy, as you get more capacity, if people come in and say, what a great building, wow, I'd like to do something, then you can allocate further rooms to them, say bike repair, computer repair, dance workshops, whatever it is, and then move up to other floors. The question of accessibility is a very good one. Yeah, we're aiming to make this accessible and welcoming to all. So obviously disabled access on the ground floor, people come in to events, might want to do some planning there. If you don't have a disabled lift, we always try and make sure that, you get a lift sorted and disabled and people can access second and third floors if there were one. But yeah, your group needs to look at that. And if you are going to do certain major workshops, maybe plan that in so that it is accessible for people as much as possible. But yeah, good question, and led into, just do it for 1 to 2 days a week to start, and you'll find that capacity builds, new people come in, people get excited, you get an article in the local newspaper, and then the floodgates open. People will be asking about salsa classes and yoga and permaculture courses on the roof, and juggling, jugglers in the cupboards, bike repair, over.
Okay, Phoenix, you were asking about doing breakout rooms. Do we have the technology to do that?
Ruth runs everything behind the scenes. I'm just a smiley, happy face with 30 years of experience who tries to get everyone excited. Ruth knows how to work everything. Over.
I've got co-hosting capabilities, so yeah, I can set up breakout rooms if you want people to have a chance to talk in smaller groups. Or
I think that would be good. Before we do that, though, I think Michelle wanted to just say if people are interested, there's a meeting. Is it next week, Michelle? Can you give us the details of that?
Yeah, we've got a debrief / creating a working group meeting on the 25th. So that's Tuesday next week at 7:30. There's already quite a few of us committed to attending that, which is wonderful. But if anyone else would like to join us, send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat, and I'll send you the link for the meeting. It'll be on Zoom. Thank you.
Okay, Ruth.
Yeah. So breakout rooms. What we found. So was it Bath that came up with these questions? I think it was.
Yeah, Bath.
Really good.
Very intelligent people in Bath.
Yeah, and beautiful buildings. They had a little slideshow of all the empty buildings in Bath. Oh my God, that was so beautiful. Anyway, they put everyone into breakrooms to think about 3 things. One of them was, what would you want to see in, what sorts of projects or things would you want to see in an Abingdon Climate Emergency Centre? What would you want to bring to the Climate Emergency Centre in Abingdon? What group or what project or what skill do you want to bring and add to that? And are there any other groups that Abingdon's Climate Emergency Centre team should be reaching out to that aren't included here? Yeah.
Maybe we can write that in the chat, Ruth,
yeah,
so that everyone's got that before they go into the breakout rooms. What would you like to see in Abingdon Climate Emergency Centre? What would you personally, or what would your group like to bring to it? And the third one, any other groups you think we should outreach to in Abingdon to bring them in? So just you don't have to stick totally to it, but just some ideas. And then if there's a note taker in each breakout room, then each note taker feeds back at the end some of the best and most exciting condensed wisdom from all you lovely people, and gets us excited for the next phase. Okay. So what is the next phase?
How long are we going to be in breakout rooms for?
How long have we got? How long does everybody expect? Should we do 10 minutes? Is that too long? Is that right?
Yeah, 10 minutes is fine.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if we could also ask the question if anyone feels strongly about a venue or location.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Would be nice. Thank you.
All right, so it's a bit like the Eurovision Song Contest or something. I think Ruth is going to separate us. We're divided for the joy of reunion into, what are we doing? About six
breakout rooms, 4 in each room. Randomly, you'll all appear. You might know everybody, you might not. Hey ho. But have fun, and we'll see everybody back here in 10 minutes.
If you introduce each other and what you do, what group you're from, and somebody facilitates and somebody takes notes, please give each other enough time to
take notes of some at least one main thing from each of those questions so that you can feed back to the main group. That would be good. Okay, see you in 10 minutes.
Okay, well, who was in group number 1? Okay, so Michelle, who's feeding back from your group?
I think it's me, if everyone's happy for me to. Yeah. So we went around the houses a bit, but all very interesting. And I'll start with the skills. So Daniel's committing himself to helping out on the working group, and there's a whole host of opportunities with him in terms of Stonehill, surplus food, growing allotment, land, whatever that might be, once we've engaged with the landlord. But that's really sounds positive. John and Peter are going to be available in terms of us asking questions, because John has experience in South Oxfordshire where there's already a centre of sorts, and so he's got a wealth of knowledge, but not much capacity. So he has very kindly offered to be at the end of a line. And then in terms of what we'd like to see, there was definitely raising awareness of the climate emergency, whatever that looks like. But then also potentially this working from home, but working from the centre. So Wi-Fi, people engaging there. So, you know, because we know there's going to be lockdowns, don't we, as well? Never mind, a lot of people still going to be working from home. So that was as far as we got with what things. In terms of groups, we want to see faith groups. U3A have apparently got 200 members in Abingdon, the Abingdon Bridge for the youth. And then we spoke a little bit about allotment people as well in Abingdon, get them on board. And then venue, the precinct. I think that was it.
Okay. Phoenix, did you want to say something?
No, just enthusiastically waving my hand. Sorry, I get a bit overexcited sometimes. Apologies to the group.
Okay, should we do feedback from group 2? Who's in group 2?
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, go on then, Sue.
Me, Meredith, and John, and Ruth. We asked lots of questions. Okay, so in terms of what we'd like to see, we were saying that for the refill shop, we could do, if we'd order tread on the toes of added ingredients, we could just do like food and dry stuff and things like that. But also Meredith mentioned a milk dispenser, because there's so much plastic from milk bottles. That's just an idea. But also, and lots of other things like swap shops and things, but also we want it a lot as information sharing and possibly having school groups visiting. Also mentioned having a scientist talking and having an Ask the Scientist session. What else? And then in terms of venues, we're thinking of, we discussed, shops in the precinct, for example, Peacocks and M&Co, but also mentioned the upper reaches, but we're not sure what kind of condition that is in. So we'd have to find out. What else? Yeah, other groups. So we thought youth groups would be good to get involved, although we don't know of any youth groups apart from Youth Strikers and obviously EJ, but wondered whether there are any other youth groups. I'll have to maybe ask the schools. I think that's about it.
That's pretty good, I think.
Very good. All right. Well, I was in group 3, but I think, was it Pete, you were going to feedback on group 3?
Yeah, sure. We weren't, unfortunately, quite as productive as you guys, so, but we got through a couple of the questions. So in terms of what we wanted to see, we were up for having a vegan and plastic-free cafe. So although some of the cafes locally are kind of dabbling in that, it'd be good to kind of go the whole hog on that front. And then there was this idea of having a sort of an info hub for the town, so people could kind of start getting a bit more interested in the town and what's going on, and kind of hopefully get excited about trying to look after the town and make it a better place. And then the idea of having some kind of like arts hub, so like music, sort of comedy nights, film events, gallery events, or whatever, which you can draw people in just as fun things like you can with the free food, and then get them into a conversation about why it's all happening, because people do lots of stuff for free things. And then in terms of what we could bring, I think because we had there's quite a lot of different and good levels of experience in our group. So experience of running similar sort of things in Abingdon in the past, understanding around the legal aspects and particularly around leasing and stuff. Organizational skills were like, there's a lot of events being organized that are environmentally focused. There's lots of people with planning and organizing skills and everything that comes with that. And I think although we didn't come up with a list of people or groups that we would want to reach out to, I think we're all probably, and it's true for the whole group, pretty well connected with various different groups. I think it's just a case of getting the list together and figure out who we've spoken to and who we haven't, and contacting the rest of them. But in terms of location, we didn't get to that, but I think the precinct sounds like a pretty good shout.
Right, wonderful. And who's in group 4? Oh, Eleanor, are you feeding back from group 4?
Any object? Okay. We were really talking about what we could do would depend on the place that we could get hold of and the size of it. And that until we could get hold of somewhere, we couldn't really decide what would be possible to do there. We also mentioned the old, what used to be Peacocks, and previous to that Summerfield as a big space. We agreed that it should be central. We were also saying that it's going to be an awful lot of responsibility for some people. Like somebody would need to be in charge of finances, somebody would need to be in charge of, booking in groups and so on. So we have to think of that first of all. I think Tim Hunt had the idea of giving space to local sort of small business enterprises, a bit like the market and but undercover. And I had more the thoughts of having workshops in there on various themes to sort of get people in and so on, get them interested. Also letting out the space to various groups to meet and so on. Does anyone want to add anything to what I've said? Anyone from group 4? Tim, anything I've forgotten?
Summed it up nicely, Eleanor, thank you.
Right, okay.
Well done, Eleanor.
Yeah, happy with that. Yeah, as I said, I thought the main thing was the venue was defined a lot of what could be done afterwards, and the venue probably needs talking about and arranging first. But I agree also that the jobs that are going to be involved, the responsibilities involved, are going to need, and the time involved, you're going to need some discussion and thinking about.
Okay. Was there a group 5? Who was in group 5?
We were Richard and Michelle and me. We thought we would like to see information, lots of information about the climate, and a place to listen to people and listen to people's worries, inspiration and hope. What project skills could we bring? Well, Richard, I'm going to get you to say about that in a minute yourself, because Richard has many years of experience of running a social enterprise, and that there may be some points of crossover with Oxford Wood Recycling. Who would other groups we should contact? We'd like to connect people who are left out. Theatre groups, music. And the location, we thought the precincts, town centre would be the right thing. So the other thing that we were talking about was that maybe it shouldn't be called the Climate Emergency Centre. Maybe it should be called something, anything, the hub, or the community, or the Abingdon Sustainability Centre, or whatever. Anyway. Richard, over to you.
Thanks, Sally. I think on that last point, although I raised it in a sense that I felt that, and I think, I don't know, Phoenix, you were nodding in the sense that you weren't against the idea of not calling it a climate emergency centre. The only thing that occurred to me was that how do you retain the brand, if you like, or the central message and the network of climate emergency centres when centres name themselves in different ways? What's the thread that keeps it all together? So maybe I could pose the question and you could come back on that. And then secondly, in terms of Oxford Wood Recycling, we're really, just because we're a fairly stable social enterprise with, we feel rooted in the community, and we're also, as a kind of business plan and corporate objective, to build our links with Abingdon. We're in South Abingdon, but we're not regionalist. We want to work within and for our community, and that's why we're constituted. So, meeting the needs, environmental and social, where we find them. So there's certainly bandwidth for us in terms of working together with a climate emergency centre, and any resources we can share. We'd be very willing to do so. On a personal level, I've had so many years in social enterprise, both running a social enterprise and also working in a cooperative sector and in business advice for starting social enterprises. So I'm more than happy to share any experience, and certainly on legal structures, I've got a lot of experience in that as well. So just offering that up.
All very good points. I'll come back after feedback if I can on that. Put something in the chat.
Okay, was there a group 6?
Yes, we talked about peacocks and the upper reaches, and we talked a little bit about, well, I suppose that the need or not for the idea as such, whether XR already find their own places to meet, for example, or whether they would benefit from an emergency centre, which we don't actually know about, I guess, but that was about. I had a comment about the info hub for the town. I had a sort of similar thought, that was that it'd be nice to have an advisor who could go to an eco advisor, which they could be experts in things you could do. So you could go along and say, what can I do? And they could say, well, what's your house like, and what's the insulation like? And I could point you to these people and that sort of thing, a bit like Citizens Advice Bureau, but just for climate things. But we didn't talk about that, but anyway, that came to my mind. Other groups that we should reach out to. Did we think of that? I'm not sure we thought of anyone in particular. I brought up the refills thing, and Clive also brought up his frustration with, the small gestures, which, I don't know, in a way we all feel like we should be doing things nationally or even internationally. I think that probably sums up what we said, maybe. Is that fair, Phoenix and Clive?
Yeah, I got most of that. I just Clive came in with a very radical, we need to do things more than just recycling. We need to look at policies and how do we campaign on bigger things, such as banning cars from the centre of Abingdon or something, and
be great.
Big thinking, and how do we work together to kind of change policies and things like that. Obviously, it's another scale of things, but I liked what Clive said there. And he said Hester Hand has got information on the Abingdon Civic Society, have done a lot of work in these areas as well. We should tap into that. Clive, is there more you want to add there?
No, that's fine. Hester, are you in group? Were you in group 3, Hester?
I don't know what number it was. I was in Caroline's group.
We were 3.
Yeah.
I kind of guessed that. how well organised your the replies were for that group.
Well, I thank Pete for that. Yeah. I mean, just on the thing about getting involved with policies, there is a neighbourhood plan exercise going on at the moment, and things like traffic in the town centre are part of that. So people who want to get involved with that should check on the town council website or whatever and get involved with the neighbourhood plan. Yeah, in terms of the civic society, I think the one thing that we would quite like to get in there is this idea of somewhere where people can go for information. I said in the group, I said about people expend a lot of time and energy trying to find out what's going on about Lodge Hill Slips or Dunmore Estates or whatever. And if we had an area in this place which people could come to for information, and if the information wasn't there on display, there would be some way they could log their question and get it answered, you know. And that's what in other areas they call it an urban room, which is a very boring sounding name, but it means somewhere where people can go for information about the town in any respect. Yeah.
I was just thinking, Clive, I mean, you want change on a national scale. Could we have some sort of advice about what our local councillors and MPs stand for? Would we get away with that? You think so, Phoenix?
We've had 5 local councillors into the Ilford Climate Emergency Centre. Bob Littlewood, our favourite local councillor, actually went off skipping down the street. He was met by one of our other caretakers. He was so happy after we'd shown him around the Solutions exhibition. He said, I'd love to get schools in here, because he used to be a school teacher. So yeah, and we had one of the other councillors, Khalid Noor. He said, well, I'm a solicitor as my other job, and maybe I could do my advice surgeries for being a councillor here, but maybe I could do some advice surgeries for legal support for people. So yeah, there's definitely some interest there from council groups and things. Just to come back there on, so I can't quite remember whose point there on the naming. I mean, if we were commercial people and we wanted to make a lot of money and we were kind of thought about being consultants, we would probably have branded this a lot better and said, these are our principles and values. You should call yourself Nottingham Climate Emergency Centre or whatever it is. But we've tried to build an autonomous network that's decentralised. Every area knows what best works for them. They live there. So we've kind of left it that groups can call themselves what they'd like the Staines is the Talking Tree, Staines Climate Emergency Centre. Manchester's call themselves the Climate Hive, which would be Manchester's Climate Emergency Centre. So each group can choose what they'd like to be called. Swindon is Swindon Community Hub. We would like them, if they could, please, to write underneath part of Climate Emergency Centre UK Network, or the name of their town, Nottingham or Brighton or Bristol Climate Emergency Centre. That would be lovely. But we are all autonomous and we are all different in our towns, and so each one will reflect the local community and things like that.
Can we call it the Phoenix Centre, or do you have a trademark?
Trademark on that one, but we could do with a few more Phoenixes. There's lots of younger ones coming up, but it's a hard job. Somebody's got to do it. Yeah, you can call it whatever you want, guys, but you know, I'm going to be cheeky and stick a little crowdfunder in at the end. We do all this for free and voluntary, but more important than funds and money, if anybody wants to help with this very exciting project, you know, on the UK level, we always need a bit more help with communicating with different groups and things, and the people hours is more important than funds and stuff. But yeah, you know, it sounds like you've got a great range of really interesting groups there in Abingdon, and you know, some amazing stuff could happen if you've got a space to bring groups and people out the woodwork. But yeah, I always love the breakout rooms thing. It always brings out lots of good wisdom.
John, have you got your hand up? I just thought, John, we're nearly out of time because we want to finish at 9. But you want to say
just a quick one. I should be sorry if we lose climate from the title.
Oh. Okay. So, Keith.
Just one quick, as we got you here, just one quick question for Ruth and Phoenix on the, dare I say it, the subject of money. Landlords, obviously, they charge 3 things in general. They charge rent, they charge service charge, and they charge buildings insurance as such. I mean, we all understand that, you know, they're willing to forego rent, but have you seen in other places that actually they are asking for contributions for the service charges and the buildings insurance at all? Or a landlord saying, no, you can have it all for nothing?
That's a very good question. So basically, to cover that very quickly, this model helps you to get a building rent-free. You save them 100% of the business rates,
Yep.
and so you don't pay any rent. On utilities, that's the month or two negotiation you have, and Space Generators Charity can help with. Linda, who's very experienced in these things, help and advise. But we asked originally the home base owners, will you pay the electric bills? Because we're saving you 200 grand on the business rates. And their finance department was, oh, I don't know, we don't want to commit to all of that. But someone from Bimble Solar suggested a cap. So they pay so many £100 every month. And if we go over that, we pay over. And if it's under, you know, then they pay it. And we have an energy audit. We've got somebody to come and do that. And you convert all the bulbs to LEDs. So you try and reduce the utilities. But I'm hoping that in this model, we get them to pay most of or some of the utilities, because they're saving sometimes 50,000, sometimes 200,000 pounds, so they can afford £12,000 a year for the electric or whatever it is. On buildings insurance, very quickly, is your group buy public liability insurance and management liability insurance, which covers your directors or your not-for-profit or your charity, but the landlord is responsible for the buildings insurance, which is if there was a fire or the roof and the walls kind of thing. And there's bits in the handbook to help you get insurance with certain companies.
But you're saying that they will actually waive those charges for CECs?
Rent-free is part of this model, yes. They give you rent-free in return for something like a £1 peppercorn lease, you know.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll sum up then. Thank you to Phoenix and Ruth for giving your time and presenting the Climate Emergency Centre idea in such an upbeat way and getting us all really involved, very involved talk. So thank you very much. And good night, everybody.
Really hope to come and visit you and have a cup of tea in Abingdon at some point.
You're very welcome.